I think we'll start, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Standing Committee on Citizenship and Immigration, Monday, May 26. The orders of the day are that we're studying the strengthening of the protection of women in our immigration system. This meeting is televised, and we have three witnesses, three guests visiting us today. Two are here in Ottawa, and one is by teleconference in Montreal. And you know, I'm going to mess up the pronunciation of your names, and I don't mind if you reprimand me at all. Shahin Mendezat.
Shahin Medizadeh. Excellent try, though.
Yeah, well, it's a try. And he's the superintendent in Manitoba of the D Division Royal Canadian Mounted Police. And Muslims facing tomorrow, Rahil Raza. Perfect is the president.
Thank you.
And by teleconference in Montreal, the Afghan Women's Center of Montreal, Maki Arif, who is the president. Can you hear me,
Yes,
madam?
Yes, hi.
You can hear me?
Yes, I'm Maki Arif. Yes,
I'm going to let you go first, Ms. Arif, and you have up to 8 minutes to make a presentation to the committee.
Okay, and I'm ready to read my statement.
Of course.
Okay?
Absolutely.
Yes, but I'm not sure, maybe 8, maybe 10. Okay, now I have to go to start.
The
okay?
floor is yours.
Yes.
Thank you for coming.
Yes. Okay. First of all, good afternoon for all of you. I'm here in Maki Arif. First of all, I would like to thank the Committee on Citizenship and Immigration for allowing me to the opportunity of coming here today to talk about the issue of the immigrant spousal sponsorship program. I'm here today to express not my personal views on this issue, but to talk about the experience of the Committee of Immigrant Women and Families that I have been working with for the last 13 years at the Afghan Women's Center in Montreal. My hope today is to communicate to you their concern and their experience on this topic. As there is a question period during which I will be happy to address any topic, I will just touch very briefly now on some of the major issues that women face, both when they are sponsored by the spouse here and when they sponsor spouses from other countries. I would first like to note that while the majority of our clients at the Afghan Women's Center are from Afghanistan, who do aid women from many other immigrant communities. For example, from Pakistan, Bangladesh, Iran, and India as well. And all of the issues that I raised here in talking about Afghanistan apply to them as well. From the cases and clients that I have worked with in the last 13 years, the victimization of women who have been sponsored by a spouse living in Canada arise from the following sponsorship situation. Almost all of the women who are sponsored by a spouse from Afghanistan are financially dependent upon their husbands. They cannot speak French or English and lack the skills needed to get a job in Canada. As newcomers, these women do not have social support system outside of their husbands and in-laws in Canada. Men travel to Afghanistan and marry girls such as younger than them. Within our immigrant committee, we have many cases where men in their 50s, 60s, and 70s travel to Afghanistan and marry teenage girls. Unfortunately, This is a conscious decision by these individuals who marry girls this young with the belief that when they come to Canada, they can be easily controlled. Women are pursued and forced into marriage with men in Canada by their families. Afghanistan is a war-torn country where many people suffer from poverty. There is a belief there that if a daughter married a man who lived in Canada or United States or Europe, the daughter can help the family financially later on. Women and their families are given false information by men and their families before the marriage. They are given false information about the ages of men, their married state, their physical health, their economic situation, and even about their characters. We have many clients at the center who came to Canada and found out that the men they had married already had other wives and children. So found out that their husbands have psychological or physical illnesses that they were not aware of. The result of this situation are that many women face social isolation, economic difficulties, and verbal or physical abuse, and because of their lack of job skills and knowledge of their right and the resource available to them are dropped in these situations. Some women refuse to seek help, even if help is offered because of the cultural issue. Others may refuse to leave abusive situation because they know that they do not have the economic means to support themselves and their children. There is also a great gap in services available to them in their languages. They cannot communicate their situation to social workers, lawyers, and the police in English and French, and are thus barred from those avenues of aid. Well, the immigration sponsorship program is used by many people to sponsor spouse whom they live with very happily. I know through my work that can also be used to create marriage, which result is too many women and young girls living in unspeakably horrific condition of mental and physical abuse and economic and social operation. It is my great hope that the result of our discussion today will lead to progress in helping them reclaim their voice, their hopes and dreams in their lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Ref. We have two more witnesses, and then I expect members of the committee will have questions for you and our other two guests. But thank you for your presentation. I'm going to try it again. Mr. Mahadizaha.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know why bother. Thank you for coming, sir. You have up to 8 minutes as well.
Thank you. Mr. Chair and honorable members of the committee, my name is Shaheen Medizadeh. I was born in Iran and left that country during the revolution in the late 70s. I lived in India for 5 years before immigrating to Canada in 1984. I have been a member of the RCMP for over 25 years, serving in several communities in 4 provinces, performing my duties in many disciplines of policing. Today, Mr. Chair, I do not speak to this committee on behalf of the RCMP. I speak as an immigrant and a Canadian citizen. And Mr. Chair, although I'm not wearing my blue serge, I will provide testimony based on experience and knowledge I gathered through my years as a police officer. My goal is to provide you with some of the efforts from the policing community, non-government organizations, and most important, our citizens in support of making this country more secure for female immigrants. I will also provide my observations as far as some gaps that may assist this committee. As an immigrant, I can advise that the first few years of anyone immigrating to Canada are the most challenging and risky years. The new immigrants are exposed to an environment that might be somewhat foreign to them, and they need time to make adjustments in a short time to fit in. These adjustments can be much harder for some as compared to others. Inasmuch as the new immigrants experience a sense of joy and accomplishment, they are also filled with other feelings such as fear and uncertainty, which naturally adds to their level of stress. In the case of female immigrants, due to potential gaps in their language and other skills, they may tend to hide and choose to stay only with their own cultural groups and family, as that's their comfort zone. These women may also choose to accept mistreatment by their spouses as they feel that they have no other choice. As far as newcomers to this country, they go through great lengths to achieve this goal. Conditions in some regions of the world are such that by immigrating to Canada, even if it meant being mistreated, it outweighs what some of these women had before. In some cases, the notion of leaving their families is not supported by their own relatives and friends, and it may bring shame to them. That's why at times the only support that is offered from the close relatives is to keep relationships together at all cost. As the honourable members of this committee have heard, there have been many cases of homicide in Canada where the family's honour has been ruled as a motive behind those despicable acts of violence. The latest of these cases, the Shafia case, attracted extensive media attention. I took part in that investigation and supported the lead agency, Kingston Police Department. This has been the saddest case I've ever had to work on, and something that opened my eyes to the gaps and the need in bringing more cultural awareness to the police and other supporting agencies in Canada. The increased awareness could provide them with a better vantage point when faced with situations and allow them to execute their duties more effectively. After all, everyone's common goal is to provide security and protection to all our citizens. Following the trial, I led an initiative where the RCMP, in partnership with Department of Justice, developed an online introductory training on honor-based violence and forced marriages. This training is in its final audit stage and will be made available to all RCMP officers through the RCMP's internal web-based training in both official languages. This course will also be made available to other police departments through the Canadian Police Knowledge Network. I'm also aware of the other efforts that are being taken on to develop training, one being a similar type of training on honor-based violence and forced marriage at the Ontario Police College. I'm hoping that providing more awareness to the frontline police officers on this issue provides them an ability to recognize and assess risk to female immigrants more effectively when responding to situations of alleged family violence and forced marriage. More important, understanding of these issues will provide them with the tools to activate support systems and keep the victims safe. Many other government departments and agencies, both federal and provincial, such as Status of Women, Immigration and Justice, have been very active to bring more awareness to their employees and others on the topic. In regards to the other organizations, I can advise the committee of efforts by the Alberta Crime Prevention Program to develop some training on honor-based violence and forced marriages for the members of different support agencies such as nurses, social services, and teachers. I'm very excited about this initiative and hope that once the training has been developed, it can be shared with similar agencies in other provinces. Awareness is a key to helping these victims, as such crimes are grossly unreported. And in most cases, the only way to detect them is through having trained individuals looking through a wider lens and knowing how to communicate effectively with the victims. These organizations' roles are critical in increasing the overall safety of women in Canada, including our immigrants. On the third front, I'm aware of several influential women groups in Canada who are holding information sessions and conferences to discuss this important topic and bring more awareness to the community members. In my opinion, this is where the real positive change can come about, which can ultimately provide a safer environment for women in Canada and within our immigration system. Such efforts will have to be supported by our organization. Ultimately, the goal is to prevent the crimes before they are committed, as by the time the police is called to respond, it may already be too late for the victims. All these efforts promote a common theme, and that is to have individuals who are victims of any sort of abuse to know their rights, but more important, to know what to do when they are or feel that they might be victimized in the future. More education to our newcomers in this area will be extremely useful. However, language barriers makes it very difficult to provide necessary information to everyone. This gap makes it also difficult for victims to step forward and ask for help. Of course, there are many other reasons, such as fear of family shame, financial dependency on the abuser for a victim to refuse to come forward. They may also be afraid. There may also be fear and or lack of trust in authorities. Different agencies continue their efforts to build more trusting relationships with immigrants. After all, that's what we do in Canada. The key is to continue tirelessly with these efforts and ensure that we are there for the victims when they do reach out for help. That takes a lot of collaboration and teamwork between different agencies, and I stress the S in the agencies, as one can't do it alone. Over the years, organizations have become much better in this area. However, there is always room for improvement. United Kingdom has been studying the topic of forced marriages for several years and have developed many useful processes and subject matter experts in many different organizations to combat the issue of forced marriage and honor-based violence. A closer look at the efforts in the United Kingdom might be useful to see how we can adopt some of these measures here in Canada. Mr. Chair and honorable members of the committee, in conclusion, I would like to thank you for allowing me to participate in your committee's important study of strengthening the security of the vulnerable female immigrants in Canada. And I hope the information I provided and the response I may have to your questions will be of some assistance. Thank you.
Well, thank you, sir, for your presentation, and I know members of the committee will, after our final witness, have some questions for you. Thank you for coming as well. Ms. Raza, last but not least.
Good afternoon. I thank this committee for the opportunity to speak on a very important issue, and I commend the government of Canada for making it a priority to protect women and strengthen their rights. As President of the Council for Muslims Facing Tomorrow and a lifelong activist for women's rights, I wish to focus on the South Asian community, where many of these problems occur, and where I've had the most interaction with victims of polygamy, proxy marriages, and forced and underage marriages, all at a grassroots level. Let me begin with forced marriage. You must all be aware of the report by the South Asian Legal Clinic of Ontario that found that parents, siblings, extended family, grandparents, and religious leaders were all involved in pushing individuals into forced marriage. I will not repeat the statistics because they have been documented, but I will share that this is a document that came alive for me when I met a young girl at a conference in Kingston a few months ago. When she saw my card, she took me aside and she spoke to me in my language to tell me her story, which was shocking and sad. She came here at 16, although her age was forged on her passport to show that she was 18. She was forced by her parents to marry a Canadian citizen who she had never met. This was done through a mediator who took a lot of money for this arrangement, promising her a wonderful life with a wonderful man, along with instant Canadian immigration. Once here, the sponsor, who turned out to be not so wonderful, kept forcing her family to send money to him, ostensibly for her upkeep, and when they refused because they had no more to give, he physically abused her and abandoned her, keeping all her papers. She told me that she was literally on the streets with the clothes on her back. She did not know where to go, what to do, or where to live. Some kind neighbors took her in and helped her find her way, helped her start some education, apply for new documentation, which, as you know, and she told me, is extremely hard. But she is still in limbo, facing depression, isolation, and fear. Her complaint to me was that the system did not step up to help her when she is actually the victim, and if she had known about the legal system earlier, she would not have felt so powerless. There are many other cases like hers, and I am here because I don't want to see this happen to a single person ever again. With regards to polygamy, the Canadian law regarding polygamy obviously needs to be revisited. In case of the Muslim community, and I speak of that because I am from the Muslim community, religious leaders are licensed to perform a nikah, which is a Muslim marriage. But they are not obligated to check and see if the woman has been forced into that marriage or whether polygamy is involved. So I believe there needs to be stronger checks and balances, as well as much more accountability by the religious leadership. May I point out here that some religious leaders believe that they are justified by aspects of their faith to perform polygamous marriages while violating Canadian law. Therefore, the impact of Sharia laws must also be examined while looking at polygamy. In terms of forced marriages, the question is, how are we tracking forced marriages? And I'll refer to a mention that Shaheen made here and bring your attention to the UK, where forced marriages were such a huge challenge. So the British Home Office has a forced marriage unit, FMU, which has tracked that more than 5,000 people from the UK are forced into marriage every year. 82% of the cases involved female victims, and 74% of their cases involved South Asian. Last year in September, the Forced Marriage Civil Protection Act was enforced, making forced marriages a criminal offense. There is also a helpline for women, and law enforcement agencies are trained to look for signs of abuse. In Canada, we need such a law. We need a helpline and training for our officials, which I believe has just started. I would also recommend that when potential spouses go to the Canadian consulates outside of Canada for their paperwork, before coming to Canada, they must be made aware of their legal rights, and they should be given the contact of a specific helpline or Canadian organization that should oversee their progress in this country and track their safety until such a time as their paperwork is complete, or that they are able to stand on their own feet. Upon arrival, they should be given orientation with the sponsor present so that both parties are aware of Canadian laws and the rights of individuals. And I stress here both parties because I believe it's really important in cases where the sponsor may be a Canadian man that he should understand that if he is sponsoring a woman to come here, she may want to be educated, she may want to work, and his cultural upbringing or background should not come in the way of this person who is coming here to achieve these rights that she has. Furthermore, I believe the sponsor should also be made to put aside some financial support for the spouse. None of this should be left to the family or the community, who are sometimes partners in crime, and those sponsors found abusing the system should face harsh penalties so that it becomes a deterrent to potential fraudsters. I support the idea of people coming to Canada having a language ability, because that is the only way that potential victims will be able to know their rights and, more importantly, to access them. Having said the above, there is obviously a very fine line between fraud and genuine cases of spousal sponsorship. So I don't want to be seen to be coming between people's marriages, but I would like to say that while tightening the spousal sponsorship program, there should be a genuine effort not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Those are three excellent presentations, and now my colleagues will have some questions of clarification of some of the issues that you've raised. Mr. Menengakis is first.
Thank you, sir, and thank you to all three of our witnesses for appearing before us today. I listened with great attention to your testimonies, and I found them to be very informative and very well thought out, so thank you for that. I want to pronounce this right. Medizadeh. Medizadeh?
Yes.
Mr. Medizadeh. Khoshal Shadam, Horbune Shoma. The
Khayr
extent of
mamnoon.
few words in Farsi. You mentioned in your presentation the words honor-based killings, honor killings. And that's something that is, very disturbing to all Canadians. Certainly the Shafia trial brought that dangerously close to home, as we all know, and something that nobody expected would be of concern to Canadians, but we found otherwise, of course. Could you elaborate a little bit on your experience with honor-based killing training in the force, and in your opinion, do you think there is sufficient knowledge by police services across the country to look out for that specific thing, if you will?
Well, as I follow the Shafia case, obviously, and throughout my years of service talking to different police officers across the country, and believe me, I've worked right across the country, I found that there is some sort of a lack of cultural knowledge in certain aspects of providing the service to, because Canada is such a multicultural country. There are 6.8 million immigrants in this country, and for police departments to actually try to build a perfect capacity to serve each and every community and their challenges is practically impossible overnight. But having looked at the gaps, especially in that case, in relation to what the accused or people who are committing the acts are trying to justify their actions on, which is family honor, which is, again, it's a very despicable act that they're doing, but that's how they're justifying it. I felt that more education was needed. Now, the training that I spoke about is not a training to make people subject matter experts, because we have to walk before we start running. So this is an introductory training to provide basic knowledge, which is an online training to make it available to everyone in a very simple fashion. And from there, we can, I think, make more strides towards developing more expertise for those specific individuals who actually have a keen interest and build up that capacity within the police departments. One good thing in Canada is we have many police departments, but they all work together, and we have really closed those gaps amongst police services. Kingston trial was a perfect example where we had many different agencies participating to assist Kingston Police on that file. So as we build up more capacity in Canada, I'm not just talking RCMP, I think we are going to see more better results in being able to identify these kind of cases and actually get ahead of them maybe a little bit before it's too late.
Well, the main reason why we decided to do this study is because we found that there was abuse in Canada's immigration system, abuse of women. People were using, primarily women. There's some, it goes the other way as well, men, but where we found that it was very important to focus a specific study on this issue to ensure that we close those gaps where people can use the system so they can abuse a person. For example, somebody meets a lovely young lady from another country around the world, say, it doesn't matter, I'm not going to mention a country, but a country in another world, and brings her here with a conditional PR and gets her, they get married, they move forward, and one of the conditions, of course, is that she stays in that marriage and doesn't use the system to fly from the country. But that sort of almost misbalances it in some situations. Some people can abuse that and use that as an abuse of the person that they're bringing over, and the person bringing over doesn't have an avenue. Where do I go? I'm here because my husband brought me here. Now he's abusing me. I need to go out there. I need some help. And we thought that, when I asked you this question, we thought that one of the ways that we can reach people is to focus a little bit on those who come to Canada. We are focusing on those that are being abused, but we want to focus on some of the women that came here and succeeded. And we're wondering if you, in your opinion, sir, feel that these people that have come here, these women primarily that have come here, that have thrived in our country, they got jobs here, they integrated, they raised their children, Canadian family values, and good, strong, contributing Canadians, if you feel that they can be useful in a mentor, thank you, in a mentor capacity to women, to newcomers in Canada.
Absolutely. I believe the mentorship program would be an excellent idea. And I know that these abuses are taking place, but there are a lot of women who are actually coming to this country who are making an extremely good life for themselves and really succeeding in life. One thing I want to say about the abuse on our immigrant women coming into the country, some of the challenges and the issues are very similar as to any other woman in Canada who's being abused by somebody, by their partner. The gap is their situation is compounded by other things such as cultural side, lack of education, maybe language skills, etc. So if there are mentors who can actually assist them and provide them with the right information and path a way for them, maybe show them a way, I believe that would be very helpful.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Blanchette-Lamothe.
Et merci beaucoup et merci à nos témoins d'être avec nous aujourd'hui.
Thank you very much. Thank you to our witnesses for being here today. I'll ask my questions in French. Can you hear the interpretation, ma'am? Do you need interpretation? Can you understand me? Can you hear me? Good. Thank you. Excellent. My first question is regarding permanent residence, conditional permanent residence. It's something that's quite new in Canada. Previously, spouses who were sponsored, in fact, received permanent residence. Now, under this new initiative, there is a 2-year conditional status. So if the relationship comes to an end, and if it's not for a reason of abuse or mistreatment that's proven, the spouse must return to their country of origin. There are a lot of witnesses who have raised misgivings concerning this conditional measure. They fear that it makes women more vulnerable. For example, Madame Merev, you spoke to women who arrive here, Madame Aref, who come here, who are perhaps ill and that they were unaware of their illness. And if they decide to break up, such a woman may be sent back to her country of origin. Other fears were such that the burden is placed on the woman who is experiencing the abuse to prove this abuse. Now, I'm not sure, don't know whether you agree, but many witnesses have said that verbal or psychological abuse isn't necessarily easy to prove. So I'd like to hear your thoughts about this conditional aspect of the permanent residency initiative. Do you think that this is perhaps a hurdle to the safety and protection of women? Ms. Raza, perhaps you'd like to start?
Say that as you said, that the onus of responsibility is put entirely on the sponsored spouse, or let's say the woman in this case, and the potential for abuse is wide open. So unless more responsibility is put on both sides, and this is what I had mentioned in my document, that whatever orientation or training or education has to be for both parties involved, why should not the sponsor also be held responsible in this case? And I think that that's something that possibly could be looked at, keeping in mind that when women are coming from, let's say, third world countries, women who are vulnerable, women who don't have language ability. They are coming maybe from war-torn countries, and, there may be a sense of desperation there. I think that puts them in a very vulnerable position, and then it ties into what Shaheen had said and the gentleman mentioned about honor-based violence, which is when a woman comes and decides that, she wants education, she wants freedom, she wants everything that every other Canadian woman has. So the sharing of responsibility is a very important component here.
Merci, Monsieur Medizadeh. Est-ce que vous avez quelque chose à...
Mr. Medizadeh, do you have anything to add to the conditional aspect of this conditional permanent residency? Ms. Arre, do you have anything to add? What do you think of this particular aspect?
She's explained you very well. Can I introduce you, Padmina? She's with me. She wants to explain this question for you. Okay?
There's no problem. We could have her name, please.
Name?
Yes, hi, my name is Patmina Sabic. I'm a program assistant with Ms. Arif at the Afghan Women's Center.
Go ahead.
Yes, one of the things I wanted to clarify, just speaking to the issue of the illness, what I think what Ms. Arif was saying was that women are given wrong information, for example, by their husbands or by individuals who go there, and once these brides or these women are brought here, they realize that some of that information was incorrect or misleading, and that it's actually the spouses themselves, for example, that may have certain physical or mental illnesses, or, for example, may have already been married or have other families. So just to clear that up. Secondly, I think in terms of the provisional or the conditional sponsorship or the conditional residency that's provided here, I think what Ms. Arif wants to communicate is that it does really provide, I think, a further means of certain individuals taking advantage of the system. For example, for women that are brought here without skills, without jobs, and where they are abused, either verbally, emotionally, physically, it becomes kind of a trial period where, for example, they might not be able to reach out for help because that hangs over them. This idea that, for example, within these 2 years, if you don't, quote unquote, behave, then there is a possibility that these sponsors, the people who sponsored them, can send them back. So I think really that it does provide just a further means, one aspect of it, of people maybe further abusing the system, and these women, I think, are very vulnerable already, and it might provide a further means of vulnerability for them.
Est-ce que vous suggéreriez...
So would you suggest, for example, that this conditional aspect of permanent residency be scrapped? Or would you have suggestions to avoid this element of making women more vulnerable? Ms. Aref or her colleague?
So I think one of the things that Ms. Arif and what we see at the Afghan Women's Center in our experience is that the 2 years conditional residency or the permanent residency, the way that might be addressed is if, for example, these women themselves, if there are government workers, social workers, be that aid workers, who can talk to them and counsel them as well to see what their point of view is. So I don't know how that would be determined. For example, if someone was taking advantage of the system and within that 2 years it was determined that they would have to return home. But for example, I think it's very important to document their experiences and to get feedback for them as to what their experience has been within that 2 years.
Thank you, Ms. Sabit. Mr. McCallum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome again to all the witnesses. I'd like to pursue a little bit the NDP line of questioning in a slightly different way. I think that we have been concerned in this committee hearings about an imbalance of power between the one who is sponsored and the person doing the sponsor, both in terms of the conditional permanent residence for marriage, because then the person being sponsored, if there's a breakdown, risks being deported, which is a clear imbalance. And so I guess I'd like to repeat the question asked earlier, but ask each of you for a brief sort of yes or no answer, because I've asked this to other witnesses. If you had a choice between keeping the status quo with the conditional permanent residence as one option, or abolishing the conditional permanent residence and going back to the old system where the person came in automatically as a permanent residence. Would you prefer the status quo or the old system? And the advantage, I think, of the old system is that you prevent this imbalance in power relation. The advantage of the status quo may be that you reduce the number of illegitimate marriages coming into the country, although that is the job of the immigration officials to determine whether it's a legitimate marriage before they let the person in the first place. So I wonder if you're comfortable doing this, if each of you could just say, would you like to abolish the conditional permanent residence system and go back to where we were? Yes or no?
I can start first. I would probably have to take a really good look at both conditions and rules and regulations under both to be able to answer that question. So I'm not really able to answer that question.
Okay. Well, that's a fair answer. Ms. Raza?
I'm going to take the middle path. It's neither yes, no, no, and I know that's not what you want to hear, but that is the reality, and the reality is that there is a in-between course, which is what one of the people just mentioned, is that it could be the status quo with monitoring of the sponsored spouse to see that her rights are not usurped.
Okay.
And I think this is what I had said in my presentation as well. I think monitoring by the government of Canada and tracking is a very important component of any arrangement for spousal sponsorship.
Okay. Ms. Araf?
Yes, my idea also, I asking to, this is the second part you now is for the old one is I except for the second decision, but it's important to not only give them 2 years to under control or to be, but give them information, give them training, consolation, all to how do you live, how is life is different from the past country, how is different from there, and what is change, how is it safe, many information.
Thank you. I think I'm running out of time, so maybe I could try very quickly one other issue. We heard from Australia and New Zealand that if the marriage breaks down, there's a way to get expedited permanent resident status for the person being sponsored so that he or she is not quickly and automatically sent back to the country. I think it would be a good idea for us to reduce bureaucracy and make it a whole lot faster for one whose marriage seems to have broken down to quickly get landed immigrant status. I just want to ask if you agree with that proposition or not.
I'll go first in this one. Anything to reduce bureaucracy any day. And so, yes, anything you can do to reduce bureaucracy and fast-track these issues, absolutely.
Good. Well, this is one of the most bureaucratic departments, so that's a good answer. Thank you.
And my assistant also answer you?
Yes, I think we agree that the expedited providing them with some kind of status so that they can stay here and the reduction of the bureaucracy, as I think that one of the biggest things that we see in the breakdown of marriages is that people believe that they can get rid of those spouses very quickly just by the fact that they're not given that residency, and that would obviously help that issue.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I probably used up my time.
You pretty well have.
Thank you.
Mr. Leon.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the witness and your testimony. It's an area where I guess in a multicultural society, when different values of either religious base or otherwise is brought in together to a country that we have to manage this. And part of this managing this diversity or this difference is a sound basis for risk management as the entire immigration system. And in risk managing our immigration system, on one hand, we need to rely on people who are doing this on good faith and who are actually bringing in a spouse because there's a genuine need, because there's probably closer customs or religious ties, and but on the other hand, it also opens it up for a certain amount of abuse of those people that want to abuse the system. What we have thought of in this conditional parent residence is to, in order not to allow people to outright abuse the system, we put in a conditional residency to allow some settling in time, allow us to examine the case. Now, this is just one of the tools. What I want to hear from you are, in an entire immigration process, from the application that starts in the home country to landing, to the monitoring of the marriage to see whether it's bona fide or not over these 2 years. What other tools do we have as a country to ensure that that this is a fair and equitable process? Let's start with Mr. Medezati, please.
Thank you. Being an immigrant myself and going through the process, I can honestly say, with the thousands of immigrants coming to Canada and the few cases that we're dealing with that are people who are defrauding the system or using it, to bring big changes, and it's basically punishing the majority for the minority infractors. So what I submit is, in relation to the immigration period, the process, I think, is the one thing that, from my perspective as an immigrant, was lacking is actually having some sort of information, or even maybe a testing before you come to Canada. To become a citizen, you have to go and actually participate in a test before a judge, etc.
But before you apply to be an immigrant, surely you must have a desire or understanding of this country before you come here. I mean, why will you not, even consider United States, South Africa, or India, or you must have there must be some understanding and knowledge.
As an immigrant, I submit that sometimes people are so desperate, they're just going to apply for any place they can get anything better than their own country. So, and this is evident in our migrant vessels, where people get in a ship and they may end up anywhere. So the way I look at it is, if you provide them some knowledge before coming here, at least that's a start, because we do have a testing before they get their immigrant or citizen status, before we make them Canadian citizens. Maybe some knowledge before they come here might be useful to provide them, at least with what Canada is all about.
Perhaps you can share us with your
Yes, I agree with what Shaheen is saying about this information. This is not something new. We've been lobbying for this for many, many years. Very clear information about what Canada is, the legal system, laws, rights, responsibilities. Responsibilities, very important too. But I would also like to focus for a moment and mention to you that, again, I speak about countries, third world countries, South Asia, where there are corrupt immigration officials who are selling this country to people without telling them what they're actually coming to. These are people who are doing the buying and selling of people. These are the ones who are arranging for these paper marriages. So, there has to be a look into this part of the system as well. Not everything is as simple as an application. I mean, we came on the regular system, but there are people who have sold their homes, who have become destitute just to come to Canada because a corrupt immigration official.
Are you referring to a Canadian immigration official in a foreign country?
They are.
Or local hires?
Well, they call themselves. Okay, there are two kinds. There are people who've got Canadian citizenship, but they then go back to these home countries and become experts in Canadian immigration, not accredited, not legal, but, they do this, and there are hundreds of them. They set up corner shops.
They need to be licensed now.
They need to be licensed. That is one of the biggest cracks in the system, in my opinion, and I come from Pakistan, where I have seen roadside shacks saying, come to Canada. These are people who have set up shop. Now, they don't paint a very clean picture. And of course, for money, you can, buy a passport, you can get paper marriages. So this is something that definitely needs to be looked at as well. The back road of coming in.
I also wish to hear from Mrs. Arret. Yeah, Ms. Arret,
Yes.
will you please give your comment, please?
Yes, my assistant is explain you, please.
Right. I think that some very valid, obviously relevant points have been made about the application process in the third countries, but I think what we wanted to talk about was the monitoring here. And I think one of the most important things in terms of resources or what can be provided from the Canadian side here would be information in terms of the rights that people have once they are here. And that might be during the 2-year conditional, that might be after, but I think what we see a lot over and over is that women are so, and not even just women, I think that extends to men too who are sponsored, is that they are so unaware of what their rights are here, even though they're not citizens, what their legal rights are, what recourse they have, for example, once the marriage does fall apart. And so I think it's really, really important, and that could be information that's provided before they get to Canada, but I think it can be provided here as well. That would be very important.
Thank you,
to
Ms.
let them know that they do have rights. Yes. Thanks.
Ms. Sitzabayeson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to all of the WARE witnesses here today. I want to start with Mr. Merizade. Yes. You had mentioned that within the RCMP, you would like to see more training, and you said it's difficult that all of our police forces to be all very well versed in all of the different cultural sensitivity needs. It would be difficult, I understand, and we can get there, just not overnight. That was in a nutshell, what you had said in that training piece. My question now, I want to translate that training need. Do you think it's and the training needs to be improved so that the individuals who are dealing with the victims or the women who arrive have that cultural sensitivity or awareness? Do you think this training should be provided for CIC staff as well as CBSA agents who might be meeting these women at the airports when they arrive?
Training, as I mentioned in my presentation, training because there are many different partners who can actually make it better for everyone's security, and even a school teacher, even the counselors at the school.
Right.
So absolutely, there's training that needs to be done in relation to how to approach certain topics in relation to certain immigrant groups in Canada, how to communicate that, how to even simple use of translators. Who do you use for a translator? There are so many different factors that can actually add to the way we can get the right information to protect them.
So when we had CIC officials here, they said that this training is already provided and that they don't really need more training. I don't know, maybe Ms. Aref or your assistant or Ms. Raza or yourself, from what you're seeing in the communities, do you find that the sensitivity is there with the agents that these women usually, or that these women are dealing with? Or do they really need
yes.
training?
Okay. Can my assistant answer you?
I think one of the biggest issues, I think, is the issue of women or the spouses actually being able to approach them at all, and that might have something to do with this idea that the sensitivity or just the cultural knowledge isn't there in terms of how to deal with these women once they are abused or they have reached out for help. But I think what we found from our end is one of the biggest issues is just making them aware of the idea that they can reach out, and also breaking down that taboo where they feel like they do have that, there is that possibility.
Say that obviously Canadian demographics have changed drastically in the last 2 decades. So it is important for training for frontline workers, for definitely that continuation of the training. The issues that we're talking about, like forced marriage, proxy marriage, honor violence, is not something that was here 30 years ago, let's say. So, keeping up with the changing demographics, the face of Canada, and the issues as they're taking place. Now, I quickly mentioned that the forced marriage unit in England has trained immigration officials to look out for these signs.
That's fabulous. Oh, sorry, I have one more minute left. That's why I'm trying to move on. I want to talk about isolation of the new women who come into the country, because a lot of our witnesses have spoken that because these women don't have access to language, and one of you, I don't remember, mentioned that they don't necessarily have fluency in English or French when they come into this country as a spouse, because they don't have the language training or skills to be able to enter the job market. They're usually forced into isolation within the home or within this small family unit, and there have been other witnesses who have suggested mandatory language training or skills development for these people who come here as spouses. What are your suggestions on that, Mrs. Arif or Ms. Sabit?
Yes, my assistant is explaining you, but the center, why we are open that center? The center absolutely services for that woman. They are coming to, they are without family, single people. They are very, very big problem. But it's more explained as Patmina.
Right. I think that the language issue we brought up was the French and English, and I think that mandatory, it relates back to one of the questions that one of the members of the committee asked, was in terms of what could be done during this process. And I think that the mandatory language or skills are something that could be applied before they arrive in Canada, but it is definitely something that is necessary before or after, and it obviously contributes not only to the isolation, but also to their inability to reach out for help if they should need it.
Thank you. Mr. Shura, you have time for a question.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And quickly, because the conditional permanent residence is being brought in, so I will make a comment for the record that this measure was introduced after consultation across Canada, and of course, this is in line with our like-minded countries, United States, Australia, United Kingdom, and the purpose of this measure was to deter marriage frauds, and also that immigration officers would give exemptions for cases where spouse is either deceased or spousal abuse is suspected. But I'm more interested to ask the questions today because all the three of you, by the way,
Sorry, the bells are ringing.
Oh dear.
Go, you finish off.
Quickly, you talked about language barrier, you talked about pre-arrival and upon arrival orientation. So I want to hear more about the language. And Ms. Raja, you talked about supports the idea of language ability. So I want to hear more about orientation upon arrival and before arrival, if we can use our visa application centers to educate the women specifically in more than 90 countries.
Absolutely, I think that you can. There are many European countries which now, before immigrants arrive, expect this mandatory orientation, so to speak, and language training, because it is of benefit both to Canada and to the people coming into the country to know at least one of the official languages and to be able to fend for themselves and know what their rights and responsibilities are. It doesn't have to be, a 1 year of education. We're talking about a very basic orientation session, which I think would work much better if it took place before they came to the country, but if not, at least immediately on arrival.
Ms. Raz, I'm sorry, when the bells ring, we have to leave, and we have to leave. But actually, the time is up, and I want to thank you, and can I call you Sahin? Thank you very much. Ms. Arif? And
yes, okay.
Ms. Sabit. I thank you all for coming to the committee and giving us your thoughts on this very important issue. And we will suspend.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, just before you hit the gavel, just one small thing. On Wednesday, we're seeing the officials for main estimates and the minister. We had a little timing issue, so the minister will appear in the second hour and the officials are coming in the first hour. I just wanted to let the committee know. Okay?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Well, I don't know. Should we suspend or call it a day? Don't leave yet. I need your help. Do you want to suspend or adjourn?
Maybe we can adopt the canvas for the report as proposed by the analyst.
No, I'm going to adjourn. We'll have to deal with it another time.
Deal with it on Wednesday?